Friday, November 21st, a day that wasn't supposed to become history, a day that didn't rise slowly. It detonated. A day that didn't begin with calm or routine. It began with a shock so violent that within minutes, the entire country was watching. Because just after sunrise inside the cold, silent blocks of FCI Fort Dix, something happened that no officer, no inmate, and certainly not Sean Diddy Combs ever saw coming. Something that would rip open his future, drag his past back into the spotlight, and send the legal system into full-blown emergency mode. It began with an odor. Guards on a routine sweep slowed as they reached Diddy's unit, their attention snapping to the air around his cell. A sharp, sweet, unmistakable smell, fermented, sugary, rotten fruit strong, the kind of smell that correctional officers know instantly. The kind of smell that means one thing and one thing only: alcohol, not outside, not in trash, not smuggled in a cafeteria line, inside Diddy's personal living space. Within minutes, the discovery was made. A cloudy, half-filled plastic bottle, thick residue settled at the bottom, bubbling foam around the rim. A homemade alcoholic brew, the kind prison inmates secretly call hooch. Sugar packets, stolen fruit, old juice, anything that can ferment in the dark under pressure. Desperate, hidden, and forbidden. But this time, it wasn't the drink that shattered the silence. It was where it was found. Under Diddy's mattress. Word didn't spread. It detonated. Inside the prison, first hushed whispers, eyes widening, corrections officers calling for backups and supervisors. But outside, TikTok was the first platform to explode. Diddy caught with alcohol in prison? Flooded For You pages. Then Instagram reels. Then Twitter, thousands of reposts, comments, theories, accusations. How did alcohol get into Fort Dix? Is Diddy spiraling? Is this the violation that ends everything? By mid-morning, the chaos was uncontrollable. Photos leaked. Officer notes leaked. Inmate whispers leaked. Screenshots of internal reports shot across the internet like sparks landing on gasoline. Every outlet picked it up. Every podcast reacted. Every influencer added fuel. And in the middle of this digital wildfire, one name returned again and again: Judge Arun Subramanian. And today, he didn't stay silent. By 10:47 a.m., a notice appeared that sent a shock through the legal system. Diddy's case was not being reviewed, not being questioned, it was being reopened. An emergency federal hearing scheduled for the same day. Friday, November 21st, at a time when the courtroom wasn't even supposed to be active. But the situation was too serious, too volatile, too explosive. Fort Dix had sounded an alarm, and SDNY responded instantly. Court doors unsealed, security tripled, journalists flooded the building, and just as the frenzy reached boiling point, you could hear it: the heavy clanking of metal restraints, echoing footsteps, and the hollow sound of a man being dragged back into the center of the storm. Diddy, exhausted, pale, shaking, eyes empty. He didn't speak. He didn't look up. Every step he took toward the courtroom was a step toward something far darker than a disciplinary violation. But before we dive deeper into this explosive scandal, before we break down how the alcohol was found, how social media ignited, how the judge prepared to deliver the most devastating blow of Diddy's life, pause for just a moment. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss breaking updates like this. And tell me in the comments right now, do you think this new evidence changes everything? I want to know what you believe before the rest of this story unfolds. Because what happens next isn't dramatic, it's catastrophic. The courtroom filled fast, cameras lifted, reporters sprinted to grab seats. The air felt tight, charged, like everyone knew the ground was about to shift under their feet. Because this wasn't just a violation. This wasn't just a scandal. This was the moment the federal system would decide whether Sean Diddy Combs would ever walk outside a prison fence again. The doors opened. Officers escorted him in. His wrists shook in the cuffs. His shoulders curled inward. He looked like a man who already knew the answer, like someone who had already seen the end and was just waiting for the hammer to fall. He sat down. He tried to steady his breath. He failed. And then, all rise. Everything froze. Every whisper, every camera, every cell phone recording. Judge Subramanian walked in with the kind of expression that could silence the earth. Not angry, not emotional, but cold, determined, final. He sat. The courtroom followed. He opened a thick folder pages of history Diddy hoped were buried. His trial, his sentencing, his warnings, his promises, and now, his violation. But the way the judge looked at the file today felt different. He wasn't reviewing. He was preparing. His eyes lifted slowly, locking onto Diddy with a weight so heavy it felt like it pushed the room downward. "Mr. Combs," he began, voice firm, controlled. "Before we examine today's discovery, this court must revisit how we arrived at this moment." Diddy's chest tightened. His breath shook. His eyes blurred with tears he fought to hide. Because he knew this wasn't the beginning of a hearing. This was the beginning of an ending. The judge's words lingered in the air, heavy enough to change the temperature of the courtroom. Diddy didn't look up. He couldn't. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, drowning out everything except the quiet rustle of the judge turning a page in that thick folder, the same folder that held every step of the nightmare he'd been living since May. Every witness, every accusation, every warning. And now, every reason the system had to bury him deeper than before. "When you were transferred to FCI Fort Dix," the judge continued, "the intention was structure, rehabilitation, an opportunity to stabilize after months of high-profile litigation." His tone was calm, almost too calm, the kind that makes every word hit harder. He lifted a set of counselor notes, flipping through them slowly. But within days, officers reported agitation, volatility, difficulty following standard directives. A soft murmur rippled through the room. Diddy's hands pulled inward, chained wrists tightening as if he were shrinking under the weight of the judge's voice. The judge didn't pause. Then came the second week. Noise violations, verbal disputes, refusal to comply with basic procedures. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward, pens hitting paper faster than Diddy's breath. Even the marshal standing behind him looked more alert, sensing just how sharp this turn was becoming. Diddy's lips trembled. His eyes dropped to the table, staring at the reflection of courtroom lights dancing across the polished wood. He looked like a man watching his own life slip off the edge of a cliff. The judge lowered the papers. His gaze sharpened. "You were warned repeatedly about your behavior, Mr. Combs. You were counseled for instability, advised about emotional control." Another pause, a deeper one, and each warning was disregarded. Diddy's breath hitched. He whispered something too low for anyone to hear, but the sound of it was enough for Mark, his attorney, to place a trembling hand on his arm. "Sean," Mark whispered, "stay strong. Don't say anything unless I tell you." But the judge had already shifted to today's violation. This morning, at approximately 6:58 a.m., officers noticed unusual foot traffic near your cell during restricted hours. This behavior was recorded in 2 separate reports. He lifted another sheet. By 7:14 a.m., officers entered your cell and immediately detected the odor of fermentation. A wave of tension rolled through the gallery. Diddy closed his eyes tightly, tears forming at the corners. He remembered the night, the noises, the shadows, the sinking feeling in his stomach that something was wrong, but those memories meant nothing now. Not to the system, not to this moment, not to the judge preparing to rewrite his future. "The alcohol was found hidden beneath your mattress," the judge said, lifting a sealed evidence bag. The cloudy mixture inside glowed dully under the courtroom lights, thick and unmistakably fermented. Packed deliberately, concealed intentionally. The room hummed with shock, disbelief, judgment. Every eye locked onto the bottle. Every camera zoomed in. Every second felt like an hour. Mark shot to his feet. "Your Honor, we strongly dispute possession. Inmate areas are communal. Items move. People plant things." But the prosecutor stood before he could finish. "Your Honor," she said firmly, "we have photographic evidence of ingredients found inside the defendant's personal storage." She placed the photos on the display screen one by one, apple cores, sugar packets, Torn labels from bottles used for fermentation. The gallery gasped. Mark clenched his jaw. These items do not prove who created or consumed. A second set of images appeared on the screen. This time, inmate statements, signed, dated, each one describing seeing Diddy with the bottle, seeing him hide it, smelling alcohol near his bunk days earlier. The judge's face didn't move, but something about the stillness made the air colder. Diddy buried his face in his hands. His shoulders trembled violently. He knew what this meant. He knew how much weight inmate statements carried in federal hearings. Too much. More than he could fight. More than Mark could argue. The judge looked directly at him. Mr. Combs, this court issued a very clear warning on October 3rd. Any violation of federal correctional rules would trigger a comprehensive review of your sentence. Diddy's tears spilled over. He shook his head quietly, desperately. I wasn't trying to. Stop, the judge said, his voice so controlled it silenced the room instantly. This hearing is not about intent. It is about accountability. Diddy froze mid-breath. His sob died in his throat. Even reporters stopped typing, sensing that the floor of this hearing was about to drop entirely. The judge leaned forward. The presence of alcohol inside a federal facility does not simply violate policy. It threatens security. It disrupts order. It challenges the authority of the institution. He lifted the bag containing the alcohol. And in this case, it challenges the authority of this court. Diddy's body jerked like the words had physically struck him. The marshals behind him subtly adjusted their stance, ready for anything. His knees shook so violently it looked like he might collapse. Mark rose again, voice cracking under the pressure. Your Honor, with respect, my client has been under extraordinary emotional distress. This violation, if verified, was an isolated moment of instability. A lapse, not defiance? The judge raised a single hand. Mark stopped instantly. Silence thickened. Then, there is a point, the judge said softly, when explanations no longer outweigh decisions. Another pause. Mr. Combs has reached that point. A sharp inhale rippled across the room. Diddy lifted his head, eyes red, wet, terrified. Please, Your Honor, I didn't mean to. Enough. One word, one absolute final command. Diddy stopped speaking as if someone had cut the wires to his voice. His breath shuddered. His hands shook uncontrollably. His entire body seemed to fold inward, as though the gravity of the moment was crushing him from every direction. The judge's eyes didn't soften, didn't blink, didn't falter. Mr. Combs, he said, your violation today forces this court to reconsider your capacity to comply with incarceration requirements. This court must now determine whether you pose an ongoing risk not only to institutional order, but to the integrity of the federal correctional process itself. The courtroom felt like it shrank, like every wall moved an inch closer, like the air tightened around every person in the room. Diddy shook his head repeatedly, whispering, No, no, please. But it didn't matter. The judge wasn't talking to him anymore. He was talking about him. He was talking over him. He was talking toward a conclusion that felt darker with every passing breath, and every person in that room could feel it coming. The judge's last words hadn't even settled before the room shifted again, like a collective breath being held by every person who understood what this moment was transforming into. Diddy's chest rose and fell in fast, uneven jolts, the kind that signal a man who's lost control of his own body. His wrists rattled lightly in the cuffs, the faint metallic clinking echoing far louder than it should have in a packed federal courtroom. The prosecutor stood again, but this time she didn't bring photos or statements. She didn't even carry the evidence bag. She walked forward slowly, as though the weight of the moment required her to move carefully. She positioned herself where both the judge and Diddy could see her clearly. Her voice was calm but chillingly direct. Your Honor, to proceed, the government requests acknowledgement that this violation combined with Mr. Combs's documented behavioral instability constitutes not a momentary lapse, but a pattern. A ripple ran through the room like a sudden drop in temperature. Diddy's eyes widened. He shook his head weakly, silently pleading with her not to finish, not to say what everyone knew she was building toward. But she continued. This is not an isolated act of poor judgment, she said. This is the behavior of an individual unable to conform to federal correctional standards. Someone who has repeatedly defied warnings, rules, and the authority of this court. Mark rose so quickly his chair scraped harshly across the floor. Objection, Your Honor. This is character broadening. She is attempting to equate emotional distress with institutional danger. But the judge didn't even glance at Mark. He only said, "Overruled." The word cut through the air, sharp enough to make Diddy flinch. The prosecutor continued, her tone tightening. The defendant consumed alcohol inside a federal facility. Alcohol he helped create. Alcohol he hid. Alcohol he used despite clear and direct threats to his freedom. This is not an inmate who lost control. This is an inmate who made a choice. Diddy shook his head violently, tears splashing against the table. No, no, that's not. Please, please. The marshal took a half step closer. Mark whispered harshly, "Sean, stop. Don't speak. Not now." But Diddy wasn't hearing him. His mind was collapsing under the weight of every second, every accusation, every choice that now felt like it was stabbing him from inside his own thoughts. The prosecutor stepped back without another word. She didn't need to say more. The evidence was on the table. The judge already had everything he needed. The entire room felt it. This wasn't about debating facts anymore. This was about the system deciding whether Diddy still had a future. The judge lifted a new document, a thin one, a recent one. The words Incident Chronology, Fort Dix, printed boldly across the top. He adjusted his glasses and spoke with the kind of cold precision that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. This court has reviewed the full sequence of the events leading to this morning's discovery, he said. Inmate movement logs, officer reports, contraband documentation, surveillance timestamps. He tapped the document once with his finger. The pattern is clear. Diddy's breath hitched so sharply it echoed. On the night of November 20th, the judge continued, your behavior was described as erratic. You ignored multiple lights-out directives. You engaged in whispered exchanges with other inmates during restricted hours. Another murmur swept the gallery. Diddy's face drained of color. These warnings were ignored, the judge said, and that behavior set the circumstances that led to this morning's violation. Mark tried to interrupt. Your Honor, we respectfully argue that none of these claims prove, but the judge raised his hand again, and Mark fell into silence. Diddy sobbed openly now, hands trembling violently. His voice cracked through his tears, raw, helpless, terrified. Please, Your Honor, please, I didn't mean to. The judge didn't raise his voice, didn't shift in his seat, didn't blink. Mr. Combs, he said, your intent is irrelevant. Your actions are not. A painful gasp broke from somewhere in the gallery. Diddy collapsed forward until his forehead nearly touched the tabletop. Tears dripped down his face in a steady stream, soaking into the wood. This was not a superstar, not an icon, not a mogul. This was a man breaking apart in front of the world. The judge flipped to the final page of the chronology. At 7:14 a.m. this morning, he continued, the alcohol was discovered under your mattress, concealed under multiple layers, positioned in a manner consistent with intentional hiding. Diddy's shoulders jerked with every sob. 2 officers, the judge went on, reported the same odor, the same concealment location, the same behavior leading up to the search. His eyes lifted, locking onto Diddy like twin blades. And you were warned, Mr. Combs, explicitly, directly, repeatedly. Diddy's voice cracked through the courtroom. I'm sorry, please don't take enough. The judge's voice wasn't loud, but it shut everything down. The prosecutor sat slowly, her expression unreadable. The marshals tightened their formation. Reporters leaned in so far it looked like they were afraid to miss a breath. The judge's tone changed. It became quieter, colder, the kind of voice people use when they've already made a decision. Mr. Combs, he said, this court must now consider whether the structure of your original sentence is appropriate or if it must be replaced entirely. The room froze. Everything stopped. Time itself seemed to choke. Diddy's mouth dropped open. His breath stuttered. His hands shook so violently the chains rattled against the table. He whispered only one word. No. But the judge had already looked toward the prosecutor. Counsel, he said. Present the government's recommendation. The prosecutor stood again, exhaling deeply before she spoke. Your Honor, she said, the Bureau of Prisons has determined that the defendant poses a sustained risk to institutional stability. He is unable to comply with orders, unable to follow structured environments, unable to maintain consistent behavioral control. She stepped closer to the bench. The government recommends immediate reconsideration of his 50-month sentence, with an enhancement proportionate to the severity of the violation. A gasp, two gasps. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" Diddy's entire body buckled as if someone kicked his legs out from under him. The marshal grabbed him by the arm to keep him upright. He shook his head over and over. Please, I can fix this. I can." But the prosecutor finished the sentence that shattered the last piece of hope left in the room. Your Honor, we recommend the maximum enhancement available under federal statute. A chilling stillness swept through the courtroom. Diddy collapsed again, sobbing so hard his whole body vibrated. Mark's face lost all color. Even the reporters froze, eyes widening as the weight of what had just been said hit them like a punch. The judge didn't react. He simply folded his hands, leaned back slightly, and prepared to speak the words that would change everything. The judge didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. The silence was already thick enough to suffocate the room. Diddy's sobs echoed softly against the marble walls, each one weaker, more broken, more defeated than the last. The marshal's grip tightened on his arm, holding him upright as though gravity itself was trying to drag him to the floor. His lawyer, Mark, stared ahead, jaw locked, eyes trembling, not because he didn't have arguments left, but because he could feel in his bones that words were no longer the thing deciding Diddy's fate. The judge finally lifted the sentencing file. The sight of it alone felt like a blow. Thin, crisp, recently printed. Everyone in that room understood what that meant. Reviews are thick, hearings are thick, deliberations are thick, final decisions are thin. He opened the file slowly, almost painfully so, as if each flip of a page was designed to drag Diddy deeper into the moment. He adjusted his glasses, scanned the contents, and then fixed his gaze on the defendant. He didn't look angry. He didn't look annoyed. He looked like a man who had already weighed every piece of evidence, every warning, every misstep, and had found the answer long before entering this room. Mr. Combs, the judge began quietly, I want you to understand that the actions we take here today do not come lightly. This court has no interest in using punitive authority without cause. Diddy wiped his face with the cuffed back of his hands, breath trembling. Please, Your Honor, I didn't. Do not interrupt, the judge said calmly. That calmness was worse than any shout. It made the room colder. It made Diddy smaller. The judge continued. On October 3rd, I issued a warning, not a suggestion, not a guideline, a warning, one that you acknowledged in open court. The terms were clear. Any violation, would compel a comprehensive review of your sentence. He paused, letting the weight of that memory sink in. And yet, despite this warning, you chose to participate in the creation, possession, and consumption of alcohol inside a federal correctional facility. Diddy shook his head violently, tears falling again. I didn't mean to. The judge's tone sharpened not louder, but sharper. Mr. Combs, intent does not negate responsibility. The gallery murmured, the tension twisting like a knife. Diddy's entire body convulsed with each breath, but the judge pressed forward. This court has reviewed the testimony of correctional officers, the photographic evidence, the surveillance logs, and the inmate statements. The findings are consistent. Your behavior since entering federal custody has demonstrated instability, emotional volatility, and a refusal to comply with institutional rules. The judge leaned slightly forward. Your actions on November 21st confirm a deeper issue. You are not capable of functioning safely or responsibly in a structured facility without posing a threat to institutional order. Diddy's sob cracked the air. Please don't do this. I can change. I swear. The marshal stepped closer, silently urging him to hold himself together. Mark rose from his seat, desperation evident in every line of his face. Your Honor, I respectfully request leniency. My client has been under extreme psychological stress. His adjustment period has been difficult. This incident, while serious, does not warrant the destruction of a man's entire life. The judge didn't blink. Sit down, Mr. Agnifilo. Mark froze. He slowly lowered himself back into his seat, defeated, helpless. The judge looked back to Diddy. You were given leniency once before, he said, voice steady. You were shown mercy. You were allowed the opportunity to prove that rehabilitation was possible. He closed the file. And you violated that trust. A soft, collective gasp rippled through the room. It felt like the air thinned, like every person in that courtroom was bracing for impact. The judge folded his hands. Mr. Combs, this court must now determine the appropriate adjustment of your sentence. Diddy shook uncontrollably. Please, Your Honor, please, I beg you, The judge continued as if he hadn't spoken. The government has requested the maximum enhancement under federal statute, and given the severity of your violation, the deliberate nature of your actions, and the danger they pose to institutional stability, his eyes locked onto Diddy's with an intensity that seemed to cut straight through him. This court finds the government's recommendation warranted. The room erupted gasps, whispers, shock twisting into panic. Diddy's knees buckled, but the marshal caught him before he hit the floor. His scream tore through the room, raw, terrified. No, 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 please, please! I'm sorry, please, don't take my life! The judge lifted his hand. Silence fell instantly. This is not about punishment, he said. This is about protection. Protection of the institution. Protection of the rule of law. Protection of the very system you have repeatedly undermined. Diddy's face was red, wet, trembling. His breath came in shallow bursts, each one weaker than the one before. He looked like a man drowning in front of a crowd that couldn't save him. Your violation, the judge said, demonstrates that the structure of your original 50-month sentence is inadequate. Diddy cried out again, the sound painful, desperate. Please, I'll do anything. I won't break any rules again. Please. The judge didn't soften. Mr. Combs, you have shown an inability or an unwillingness to abide by the conditions of your incarceration. You have placed institution personnel at risk. You have violated the direct order of this court. He took a deep breath. And because of that, we must proceed. Diddy's sobs filled the silence. The entire room watched, stunned. As a man who once commanded global stages now trembled like a child in chains, begging for mercy that wasn't coming, the judge lifted the thin sentencing file once more. Mr. Combs, he said quietly, please stand. The marshal lifted him gently by the arm. Diddy swayed, barely able to hold himself up. His eyes were red and swollen. His mouth hung open as though even breathing hurt. He stood facing the judge. The judge spoke slowly, every word falling like a blow. This court finds that your conduct is incompatible with the requirements of federal incarceration. Therefore, Diddy's breath stopped. Your current sentence must be vacated and replaced with an enhanced term proportionate to the severity of your violation. A collective gasp tore through the courtroom. Diddy's voice broke into an unrestrained scream. No! Please, please don't! But the judge wasn't finished. Mr. Combs, he said, voice firm, final, immovable. The court will now deliver its revised sentence. The judge didn't lower his gaze, didn't hesitate, didn't falter. The entire courtroom leaned forward. Even the cameras seemed to inch closer as the tension stretched so tight it felt like the next breath might snap it in half. Diddy stood trembling, barely able to hold his own weight as the marshal supported him by the elbow. His chest heaved violently. His hands shook so hard the chains rattled against each other like warning bells. This was the moment, the one every headline was already preparing to write. The moment Diddy feared even before stepping into the courthouse, and the judge made sure he felt every second of it. Mr. Combs, he said, voice deep but steady, the violation you committed inside FCI Fort Dix is not a minor infraction. It is not a disciplinary slip. It is a direct assault on the authority of this court, the safety of the institution, and the integrity of your sentence. Diddy's eyes welled again. His lower lip quivered uncontrollably. Please, Your Honor, I'm sorry. I'm begging. But the judge lifted a single hand. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like the world holding its breath. He continued, you were granted leniency. You were given the opportunity to rebuild, to rehabilitate, to demonstrate respect for the rules and for this court's authority. Instead, you chose to violate those rules deliberately. You chose to conceal contraband. You chose to consume alcohol inside a federal facility. And you chose to gamble with your freedom. Diddy shook violently, tears streaking down his face. He looked like he could collapse at any second. This court warned you, the judge said, leaning forward. It warned you clearly and directly. Not 2 years ago, not 6 months ago, on October 3rd, 49 days before this violation. The words hit like a punch to the chest. Diddy whispered, broken. I know. I messed up. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The judge's eyes hardened, not with anger, but with certainty. Mr. Combe, he said, apologies do not erase consequences. The room shifted. It wasn't movement. It was the emotional weight dropping, the realization that the judge wasn't just reciting a lecture, he was approaching the sentence itself. People straightened in their seats. Reporters steadied their cameras. Even the clerk seemed frozen. The judge lifted the sentencing file one final time. This court hereby vacates your original 50-month sentence. Diddy gasped, a sound so raw and cracked that several people in the gallery flinched. No, please, Your Honor. I'll do anything. I'm begging you. I can't. The marshal tightened his grip as Diddy almost collapsed again. But the judge wasn't finished. He took a breath, steady and deliberate. And after review of the facts presented, the evidence submitted, the behavioral records, and the government's recommendation, Diddy's sob echoed. Please, don't take my life. Please. This court imposes an enhanced sentence, the judge continued, in accordance with the maximum penalty allowable under federal statute for your violation. The room fell so quiet it felt like sound itself disappeared. A woman in the gallery put her hand over her mouth. A reporter lowered his camera as if unsure whether he should film what was about to happen. Even the prosecutor looked down, knowing the gravity of the next words. The judge closed the file, folded his hands, and stared into Diddy's eyes. Mr. Combs, he said softly, this court sentences you to life imprisonment. The reaction was immediate, violent, earth-shattering. Diddy collapsed with a scream that didn't sound human. It was the sound of a man whose world had just been ripped apart in front of him. His legs gave out, the marshal grabbing him under both arms to keep him from hitting the floor. His screams echoed through the courtroom like something torn from the deepest part of his soul. No, please, I'm sorry. Please, don't do this. I can change. Please, Your Honor, please. He thrashed weakly in the marshal's grip, tears pouring, entire body trembling as if an electric shock was running through him. His voice cracked into broken sobs, into gasps so sharp they almost sounded like choking. The judge did not flinch, did not look away, did not take back a single word. He simply added, effective immediately. The courtroom exploded gasps, cries, camera shutters firing like rapid gunshots. The prosecutor closed her eyes briefly. Mark staggered forward, stunned, pale, barely able to form words. Your Honor, please. Your Honor, we request reconsideration. We request... Court adjourned, the judge said abruptly. The sound of the gavel cracked through the air like a gunshot. The marshals pulled Diddy upward. He kept screaming, crying out for mercy that was gone, long gone, never coming back. Please, don't take my life. Please, I'm begging you. His voice echoed through the courtroom doors as he was dragged backward, chains clinking, bodies shaking violently. The sound slowly fading as the hallway swallowed him. For a moment, no one in the courtroom moved. No one spoke. No one breathed. It was over. A global superstar, a cultural icon, a billionaire mogul, reduced to a lifetime inmate in one catastrophic morning, and the world witnessed every second of the fall. He wasn't leaving prison in 50 months, not in 10 years, not in 20, not ever. Sean Diddy Combs would take his final breath behind bars. And this hearing, this moment, was now history. The cameras caught everything: the screams, the collapse, the sentence, the end. Life imprisonment, effective immediately. If you're still here, tell me in the comments, do you think the judge was too harsh, or was this inevitable? Make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the fallout from this moment is only just beginning, and we'll keep you updated with every breaking development as it unfolds.